Los Angeles, California, 1988. More than 70,000 fans were already waiting outside the stadium. Some had camped there since sunrise. Some had traveled from Europe. Others had crossed entire continents for one dream: to watch Michael Jackson perform with their own eyes. Television cameras focused on the roaring crowd. Reporters called it another historic night. The world believed they were about to witness perfection. They were wrong. Perfection didn't begin on the stage. It began somewhere nobody could see. Nearly 12 hours earlier, while the stadium was still completely empty, a single pair of footsteps echoed through a massive rehearsal hall several miles away. The room was enormous. Mirrors covered every wall. Rows of powerful speakers lined the ceiling. Bright rehearsal lights illuminated polished wooden floors. Dozens of dancers quietly stretched their muscles. Musicians tuned their instruments. Technicians adjusted microphones. Nobody laughed. Nobody talked loudly. Everyone knew one thing. When Michael arrived, everything had to be ready, exactly on time. The large rehearsal doors slowly opened. Michael Jackson quietly walked inside. No sequined jacket, no glittering glove, no sunglasses. Only a simple black sweatshirt, black training pants, white socks, black loafers. His curly hair was tied loosely behind his head. He carried only a small bottle of water and a notebook filled with handwritten performance notes. He smiled warmly. "Good morning, everybody." The dancers immediately smiled back. One guitarist waved. The lighting crew applauded softly. Michael greeted almost every person by name. "Morning, Jennifer." "Morning, Greg." "How's your ankle today?" The young dancer looked surprised. "It's much better." Michael smiled. "I'm glad." No one felt invisible around him. The choreographer clapped twice. "Places, everyone." Within seconds, nearly 40 dancers stood perfectly still. Michael quietly walked to the center. The music director counted. 5, 6, 7, 8. The first beat exploded through the speakers. Michael moved. One sharp turn. One smooth slide. One perfectly timed spin. Every dancer followed. The rehearsal hall instantly transformed. Even without costumes, without an audience, without stage lights, it already looked extraordinary. After nearly 15 minutes, the music stopped. The choreographer smiled. "Excellent!" Several dancers nodded with relief. Michael slowly shook his head. "No." The room became silent. He walked back to his starting position. "My left shoulder came up too early." The choreographer frowned. "It looked perfect." Michael smiled politely. "It looked perfect. But it didn't feel perfect." Nobody argued. The musicians quietly prepared again. The dancers returned to their marks. The same routine began again. 20 minutes later, the song ended once more. Michael walked directly toward one of the mirrors, watching every movement in silence. Finally, he sighed. Again. Several dancers exchanged nervous smiles. One whispered, "We just did it twice." Another quietly replied, "Get ready. We'll probably do it 10 more times." He was wrong. They repeated the same 3-minute routine, 13 times. By midday, sweat covered the rehearsal floor. Several dancers collapsed onto benches during a short water break. One massage therapist treated aching knees. Another wrapped an ankle. A drummer stretched cramped shoulders. Michael remained standing, studying his notebook, crossing out tiny details, writing new ideas. One assistant carefully approached him. "Michael, you've been dancing for almost 4 hours. You should sit down." Michael smiled. "In a minute." The assistant laughed. "You've said that 3 times." Michael quietly answered, "I owe people my best." The afternoon rehearsal became even more demanding. Now the stage effects were added. Moving platforms, smoke machines, fire bursts, hidden lifts. Timing had to be exact. One mistake could injure someone. Michael repeated every entrance, every exit, every turn, again, again, again. If one dancer missed a beat, Michael never became angry. He simply smiled. "No problem. We'll do it together." The dancer apologized. "I'm sorry." Michael gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't apologize. Improve." As evening approached, most people were visibly exhausted. One dancer quietly removed his shoes. Large blisters covered both feet. Another sat against the wall, breathing heavily. The guitarist flexed sore fingers. The choreographer looked at his watch. "Let's finish for today." Several dancers quietly applauded. Finally, rest. But before anyone could leave, Michael slowly raised one hand. The room immediately became silent. He smiled apologetically. "Just one more time." Several dancers laughed. One jokingly dropped to his knees. "Michael, we're going to die." The room filled with laughter. Michael laughed too, then quietly said, "When people buy a ticket, they're giving us something precious, their time. They deserve everything we've got." Nobody complained again. One by one, every dancer stood back up. Every musician picked up their instrument. Every technician returned to position. The music director slowly lifted his hands. The rehearsal hall became completely silent. Then, the first beat echoed through the room once again. The first beat echoed through the rehearsal hall once again. The dancers took their positions. The musicians tightened their grip on their instruments. The lighting crew watched every movement from above. Everyone knew this wasn't just another rehearsal. It was another opportunity to chase perfection. Michael slowly inhaled. Then, the music exploded. The opening bass shook the floor. His feet came alive. Every spin landed exactly on the beat. Every shoulder movement matched the rhythm. Every finger stopped at precisely the right moment. The dancers followed with incredible precision. For nearly 5 minutes, the routine looked flawless. When the final note echoed across the room, silence followed. Then, applause. The choreographer smiled. "We finally got it." Several dancers collapsed onto the floor, laughing with relief. One guitarist raised both hands. "That's the one!" Michael stood quietly. His breathing was heavy. Sweat dripped from his chin onto the wooden floor. He slowly walked toward the giant mirror, watching the replay in his mind. After nearly 30 seconds, he quietly spoke. "My right foot." The room became silent. The choreographer frowned. "What about it?" Michael pointed toward the mirror. "It landed half a beat early." The room looked confused. Several dancers replayed the routine in their heads. Nobody had noticed. The music director smiled. "Michael, I promise you, no one in 70,000 seats will ever notice that." Michael smiled politely. "I will." Nobody argued. They knew him. If Michael believed something could improve, the rehearsal continued. Again. Hours passed. The afternoon sun slowly disappeared behind the studio windows. The rehearsal hall lights became brighter. One by one, the dancers' movements became slower. Fatigue spread through the room. A young dancer suddenly missed his timing. He stopped immediately. "I'm sorry." Michael walked over. The young man looked embarrassed.
"I ruined it."
Michael shook his head. "No, you learned." The dancer looked surprised. Michael continued, "The people who improve are the people who aren't afraid to make mistakes." The entire room listened. Nobody spoke. The rehearsal resumed. This time, the famous smooth criminal sequence. The musicians played the opening notes. Michael picked up his fedora. He looked toward the dancers. "This number isn't about dancing. It's about telling a story." The dancers nodded. Again, the music began, the famous lean, the sharp turns, the synchronized footwork. Every movement demanded unbelievable control. When the routine ended, even the lighting crew applauded. One camera operator quietly whispered, "I've filmed hundreds of performers. I've never seen anyone work like this." Nearly 9 hours had passed. Dinner had arrived. Most of the crew gratefully sat down to eat. Michael remained standing, looking over stage blueprints with the production director. One assistant approached. "You haven't eaten." Michael smiled. "I will." The assistant looked at the untouched food. "You said that 3 hours ago." Michael laughed softly. "I guess I did." The assistant placed a sandwich into his hand. "No more excuses." Michael smiled warmly. "Thank you." Several crew members laughed. Even after a full day of rehearsals, he still thanked everyone around him. Later that evening, the band rehearsed "Man in the Mirror." The atmosphere inside the rehearsal hall changed immediately. The room became quiet. Michael stepped toward the microphone. The piano began softly. No dancing, no special effects, only music. His voice filled the enormous room. Every word carried emotion. Several backup singers lowered their heads. One violinist quietly wiped away tears. When the final note faded, nobody clapped immediately. The silence itself became applause. Finally, Michael smiled. Music should make people feel something. The musicians nodded. They understood exactly what he meant. The clock now read 11:43 at night. Nearly everyone looked exhausted. The rehearsal director slowly stood. "That's enough for today." Relieved smiles appeared everywhere. People hugged one another. Some stretched aching backs. Others packed away instruments. Michael remained near the center of the empty stage, looking up at the lighting grid. The director walked over. "What are you thinking?" Michael smiled. "I'm imagining opening night." The director laughed. "You've imagined it 1,000 times." Michael quietly answered, "I want every person in that audience to forget every problem they brought with them. For 2 hours, I want them to believe anything is possible." The director looked at him silently, then smiled. "That's why you're Michael Jackson." The rehearsal hall slowly emptied. One by one, the lights were switched off, the musicians left, the dancers waved goodbye. Only Michael remained, standing completely alone, in the center of the enormous empty stage. He looked across thousands of empty seats, then quietly whispered to himself, "We're almost ready." He turned toward the exit, completely unaware that one unexpected visitor had just walked into the building, someone whose words would leave the entire rehearsal team speechless. Michael slowly turned toward the entrance. A young production assistant stood quietly near the doorway. He looked nervous, almost afraid to interrupt. "I'm sorry, Michael. I know everyone's leaving, but there's someone outside asking to see you." Michael smiled. "Who is it?" The assistant hesitated. "A little boy. He says he doesn't want an autograph. He just wants to thank you." Michael looked toward the rehearsal director. The director quietly nodded. "I'll wait." Michael walked toward the exit. Outside, the parking lot was almost empty. Only a handful of security guards remained. Standing beside the gate was a boy no older than 10. He held an old, worn copy of Thriller tightly against his chest. His father stood quietly behind him. The boy's hands trembled. When Michael approached, he couldn't speak. Michael knelt until they were eye to eye. "Hi," the boy finally whispered. "My name is Daniel." Michael smiled. "It's nice to meet you, Daniel." The boy looked down. "I don't want your autograph." Michael looked surprised. "No?" Daniel slowly shook his head. "I just wanted to tell you, when I was in the hospital, I listened to your music every day. It made me believe I could get better." Silence filled the parking lot. Even the security guards lowered their heads. Michael gently placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. "No, you got better because you never gave up." The boy smiled through tears. "But your songs helped." Michael hugged him. For nearly a minute, neither of them spoke. After Daniel and his father left, Michael stood quietly beneath the parking lot lights. The rehearsal director walked beside him. "You changed that boy's life." Michael looked toward the night sky. "I hope I did." The director smiled. "You've changed millions." Michael gently shook his head. "If one child goes home believing in himself, that's enough." The following morning, rehearsals began once again. Exactly on time, exactly as before. The dancers stretched. The musicians tuned their instruments. Michael walked to center stage. The opening notes of "Man in the Mirror" filled the room. This time, no one was thinking about sore muscles. No one complained about the long hours. Everyone understood why Michael worked so hard. It wasn't only about putting on a spectacular show. It was about creating a memory people would carry for the rest of their lives. The choreographer quietly walked over. "I've worked with hundreds of performers," he smiled. "But I've never met anyone who practices harder than the person everyone already calls the greatest." Michael laughed softly. "There is no greatest. There are only students." The choreographer looked confused. "You're still a student." Michael nodded. "Every single day. If I stop learning, I stop growing." Those words spread through the rehearsal team. Years later, many of them would still repeat that lesson. As the final rehearsal ended, the entire company gathered together. Musicians, dancers, lighting technicians, stage builders, camera operators. They applauded. Not because rehearsal was over, because they had witnessed something unforgettable. Not impossible dance moves, not record-breaking talent, but relentless discipline. One guitarist quietly said, "The audience will see 2 hours. We've seen thousands of hours," another dancer smiled, "and every one of them mattered." Years passed. New generations discovered Michael's music. Children who had never seen him perform live learned the moonwalk in their living rooms. Professional dancers studied his footwork frame by frame. Musicians admired his creativity. Performers admired his work ethic. People remembered the concerts, the music videos, the unforgettable performances. But those who stood beside him inside empty rehearsal halls remembered something else. The man who stayed after everyone else had gone home. The man who repeated one movement until it felt right, the man who never demanded perfection from others, without demanding even more from himself. One old rehearsal piano remained inside the studio for many years. A stage technician once smiled as he looked at it. "People think legends are created under spotlights." He quietly shook his head. "No, they're created right here. When the room is empty, when the cameras are off, when nobody is clapping, because applause lasts only a few minutes, a concert lasts only a few hours, but discipline lasts a lifetime." That is why the world remembers Michael Jackson. Not only because he entertained millions, but because he proved that extraordinary success is built on ordinary days, repeated with extraordinary dedication. And long after the music faded, his greatest performance remained the one almost nobody ever saw.